Welcome to the Kentucky X-Files, Season 2, with your hosts Dennis Mays, Tyler Stewart, and Josh Gibbs. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, so you never miss an episode. Now, on to our show.
Coming towards me, just crouched down. For me, at first, I thought it was a distant voice.
I thought it was a bear. You can tell the difference between like a small or spindly leg creature and something with a larger foot. And it was big, whatever it was. It ran straight down at us and it just stopped. And it was pitch black. Couldn't see it.
And most of these witnesses that have come close to these things could have been killed.
It was beating on the side of the house. I guess it hit the side of the house as it went by.
Now, when it stood up, that's when I knew it was gone.
Like I needed someone to have pure faith in a higher power at that moment, and nobody fucking did.
Welcome back, guys, to the Kentucky X-Files.
Ha! Ha!
Sorry, I had to do that.
We're upgraded now.
Yeah, we upgraded. We got little what are the pads?
Yeah, the little sound pads.
Yeah, little mini pads.
I like this one. It's like a flashback.
What,
That's all it does. I mean,
we
it's
should put audio before, like our first audio there, and then new audio here.
No. It's like, hey, you guys remember when this happened?
perfect.
Yeah.
And then
Everybody has, when that happens, you got to look off into the distance. Like you're like, yeah.
you folks out there listening, there's a reason why we shouldn't have this. Okay, because now, no matter what anybody says, I can hit that, and it's going to make it sound like that was a joke. And then you add people laughing to it. It's amazing.
It's amazing, yeah.
This is what technology does. Big upgrades around here.
Yeah.
Big upgrades.
Big upgrades.
Do we sound better out there?
I want to say we do.
I feel like we do.
I don't.
I mean, let's let them tell us.
Yeah.
Like,
Tell us.
Write
tell
something
us.
in the comments.
Tell us how good we sound.
Yeah.
Tell us we're pretty.
Yeah. Tell us.
So tonight's an interesting night. We got a guest lined up to talk to us, and you guys remember a few weeks back we talked to Amber, and we caused a big old commotion over on YouTube with our what was it? Blood auctions and human trafficking in Kentucky, and YouTube spanked our heinies for it.
Yep.
But hey, it is what it is. I mean, do your thing. You're not stopping people from hearing the stories. And you're definitely not stopping us from getting them out there. So, whatever. Well, one of the guys that saved her, rescued her, is standing by to talk to us. And from what I understand, that's not the only weird things that are happening down there.
Yeah.
And he's been apparently into this for quite a while and wants to tell us about all of his experiences. So you know what? Just like always, there's no script. We don't even really.
Yeah.
I mean, the farthest we go with people is they'll tell us a little bit about what's going on with them, and then we'll invite them on. Tell your story. We'll listen. We always do. So, yeah, pretty wild. I did get before we get into that, though, there was a follow-up from another a fan of the show, and he actually said, I think a few weeks back, or it was a few episodes back, I read something from him where he was actually wanting to go down there and they were wanting to investigate. He said that we might also be interested in maybe looking into the assassination of Sheriff Sam Catron back in 2002 in Pulaski County. Interesting.
I think I remember the news stories about that.
Yeah. Yes. I thought it was interesting because it was an assassination. You know.
Yeah.
So did they actually said that it was an assassination?
Apparently so.
Wow, that's crazy.
But I figured.
So that's in the area that they're.
I don't think it's very far away.
Wow. Okay.
But apparently this guy is. I don't know if I have permission to put his name out there, so I won't. But apparently they're really interested in this stuff, and they like to look into these things and try to figure it out. You know, he did send me an article about a duplicate set of bones. I think we touched a little bit on that. And yeah, it's pretty. What the hell is going on down there? I mean,
these small towns, man. A lot of people like say that that's where a lot of like these underground organizations like kind of dwell and stuff because it's easier to hide in that kind of atmosphere, and they can control I guess you would say control the scene, like that they're behind the curtain in these areas, and there's a lot of other strings going to bigger places, like you would say New York, California, all these bigger places, but they're in this small town. And,
right, yeah.
And come on, like, you get curious, like, everybody, especially in a small town, where you're in a small town where everybody waves to you.
Yeah.
Everybody knows you, and then things start to happen. That's the crappy thing about, like, these people being in there is because things are going to get around. Things are going to happen.
The most disturbing part about the whole thing to me, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but was that for something of that size to happen, lots of people have to be in on it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's terrifying.
Uh-huh.
Because if it's like, okay, if you got an entire area in on it, what the hell? What are we dealing with here? You know. So yeah, it's creepy as shit, man. What we say on that actual episode, we said that the monster was actually tangible.
Yeah.
Because the monster was people.
Yeah, it was people.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's I continue to forward all the support and information that you guys are sending in out there to Amber herself, and I can tell you that she was very moved by the amount of support coming in, and there was a couple emails that were wanting to get in touch with her. It's one of them things where I'm not going to put you directly in contact with her. I will show her your email, and what she chooses to do from that is up to her. I won't be responsible for putting her in direct contact with a potential threat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But some of these folks are emailing saying they have information. They've heard other things. One lady emailed in and said that she actually heard about something similar in the same area on a different podcast. All of that I forwarded to Amber.
Okay.
So I'm just keeping the information flowing to her so that she can do it, and she's sending information back.
I want to know the other podcast.
Yeah, I can bring it up. Give me 1 second. I know our guest is waiting, but 1 second here. I'm dead sure he wouldn't want us to not get this out there.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it? Oh, there it is. Yeah, Kentucky Gone Cold is what it's called. Like, I don't know if that's the actual podcast. It says Jessica Brown Miller. I don't know if that's the host or what, but yeah. Apparently, this other podcast is, looking into some of these areas also, which is great. Maybe we can reach out to them eventually and swap some stories.
Have a good discussion.
Yep. Also, too, guys, a little follow-up, which I think you guys are going to love. Got a guest lined up to talk to us one night here soon who has, let's see, I think he said that he is, let's see here. Yeah, because of his job, he wants to stay anonymous. He is, less than an hour? Yeah, less than an hour away from us, and he's heard those howler monkey sounds up in the woods. And he said that he could possibly have had a dog man encounter. He's not sure though. So I thought that'd be awesome to get him on and have him tell us what he's got to. So yeah, if you guys want to get on to the guest, to hear what James has to tell us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's give him a call. Here we go.
Hello?
Hello, is this James?
Yes, it is.
Hey, James. This is Denny and
Hey.
Tyler and Josh from the Kentucky
how y'all
X-Files.
doing?
Pretty good.
Good, thank you.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Give me just a second. I'm gonna walk outside. I've got a house full of people, and we got a bunch of dogs. And,
Oh, no problem.
They won't stay quiet. They won't stay quiet long enough to get a good statement in of any kind. So just give me a second. I'm almost out the door here.
Oh, you're fine, man. No rush. No stress.
All right. All right. Anyway, yeah. How y'all doing?
Good, man.
Yeah, good.
So we, let's see, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we talked to Amber, and she name dropped you.
Oh yeah.
She told us that we absolutely had to get you on here and talk to you. And I know we've been having a little bit of trouble kind of linking up our times, and part of that's on our end too, because we don't always have a good way to call. But
right, and that's understandable. You know, especially when you try to stay busy and do positive things for not only yourself, for other people, you find yourself always busy.
Absolutely.
So it's completely understandable. And I've known Amber. How I met Amber was, I'm not going to go into a whole great big detail because it's a long story, but when I was a younger man, I'm 50 years old. In my 20s, as a kid growing up, I wanted to be an FBI agent. So I literally tried to become one. And if you know anything about the FBI and how they do things, you don't just sign up and they hire you. There's a process that you go through before you're actually hired. It takes about a year. And about a year into it, I got a phone call saying that for me to be ready, they were going to pick me up. And we were going to go somewhere and do something. I'm not going to go into detail of that because that's a whole other story about different issues. But anyway, so unbeknownst to me, the agent who I was under happened to be friends with her father. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So we, for whatever reason, stop in at the Rosses here in the town we live in. And Amber is 9 years younger than I am. So I was 20 years old. She was 11.
Yeah.
And, the strangest thing, what got me into the paranormal stuff, I'm somewhat of a medium, have been since I was 5 years old. And, of course, growing up, we're in the modern era where now more and more people are starting to understand that the stuff we were taught as not being real is real.
No.
Trying to prove it has been the hardest thing because nobody understood how energy works.
They still don't.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so long story short, I'm sitting there waiting. We're inside the Ross's house. Nice little typical home of a family-run businessman. They ran their own business. Yeah. And before we leave, her father just looked at me and says, "Would you do me a favor and go upstairs, first door on the left, knock on the door and tell Amber to get her bag and get ready because we have to drop her off at school before we go to do what we have to do." Okay, so I knock on this door. Go upstairs, knock on the door, and she said, "Come on in. Here's this little 11-year-old Amber Ross bebopping around the room."
Yeah.
And what caught me off guard, it wasn't her as a child just being a child, was that there were literally objects floating around her, a teacup, a vase, in a bowl of some sort. And I'm thinking, now, wait a minute. Since I was a kid, be able to sense, you call it energy, spirits, whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel anything that was of this earth. It felt more like it was something from out of this world. It didn't give me no bad vibes or anything, but it freaked me out, and I just went, okay, I'm going to go outside now. And it shook me up because I went out to the car. I didn't even say nothing to the agent I was working under. I was like, what in the world did I just witness? But
Yeah.
we've been friends ever since, and come to find out we had the same blood type and a lot of different things over the years that
That's the
got me into
RH.
more,
What is it? RH
negative.
RH negative. That keeps coming up a lot lately. The RH negative.
Yeah. Well, the studies I've been reading online on blood types, and a little backstory of that. When I first found out I was RH negative was in the early '90s, just shortly after the federal ban or the worldwide ban on blood donations, just after the AIDS epidemic was lifted in '92, where you could start donating blood again. And I had gone to a local hospital in South Carolina where I was living at the time. I was a kid, young, called into work, had to have an excuse, and was waiting on antibiotics.
Right.
And before they released me, so this other doctor comes in and says, "Well, I need you to do me a favor. You have what we call the golden blood, which means you can give to anybody, which is RH negative and O type blood." And they give me contact information for the Red Cross, and I got to, after this, donating blood to this gentleman who needed it then.
Yeah.
I got to travel with the Red Cross, and then I always wondered why, at the time, all the people that were RH negative through the Red Cross were directed to go take a spiritualism course. And I was curious about that, and I got to digging into that, and I come to find out that more people who are RH negative tend to see and experience supernatural events or paranormal events more so than RH positive people.
Really?
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting.
It is interesting.
So everything that we did when I was trying to become an FBI agent, of course, my own issues with them had to do with some of the stuff they did I didn't kind of like. I'm not going to go into that. And of course, I had back in the day, I smoked pot and couldn't quit it, so they didn't allow that, of course.
Yeah.
But we got invited places like I can't remember exactly when it was. It's been about 10 or 15 years ago, but we got invited to go to Skinwalker Ranch, a group of us, and we were all RH negative, and most of us of the O type in the RH negative spectrum.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the ones that invited us were the FBI, which, they do all kinds of stuff. We know that now through the Freedom of Information Act.
Sure.
With some of the stuff they've done.
So you did you go to the Skinwalker Ranch?
Oh, yes. A group of us did on a tour bus.
Would you mind touching on that a little bit? Like, how was that?
Well, it didn't, I didn't really feel any different, but I could tell there's a different type of energy in that area.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Native Americans, depending on which tribe, some saw it as a holy place, others saw it as a place of, bad spirits and so on and so forth.
I've heard people that have went there they're not spiritual people whatsoever, just scientific, skeptical people have went to that ranch and come back saying that they felt a heaviness to that place.
Yeah. And the thing about that is it depends on who you are, I guess, too, because I walked, at least 2 miles while everybody else was on horseback on the trails they would let us on. Okay, because there's some of that area they won't let you go on, period, no matter who you are.
Right.
And you have to have special clearance. And I could, it's like when you look through a fire and you see the moisture vapor rising up through the fire, giving that little waver of energy.
Yeah.
You could literally see that, or I could, around the whole place. But the moment we left that area and got out of that general area, it was different. It was like like being inside a bubble and then leaving the bubble. And which it also kind of touches on where I live at within the center of the Kentucky anomaly.
Yeah.
Where there's a high measure, higher than normal measure of geomagnetic energy coming from the Earth's core.
Yeah, I've looked into that. That's an actual study with NASA.
Yeah. And I knew about this property years before my sister ever purchased the property that she lives in now over here. Because I was always the adventurous type. I mean, I would go and do things even when my friends or nobody wanted to go with me.
Yeah.
And, luckily through my life's journey, I've had a lot of, mostly women, I guess is a good thing for me, and them too, but have experienced a lot of strange things in different places, and most of them that we went had a higher reading of geomagnetic energy coming through it. Like that picture that I sent you all of what I call the Trojan horse.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't actually see it with my own eyes. I got out of the car in the driveway and just, I felt like something was drawing my attention. And when I get that feeling, I always take a picture or two or however many in that general area
right.
that it's drawing me to. And I've been lucky a few times to come up with some abnormal stuff that just, you look at it and you're like, well, I've been accused of, oh, you staged that. I'm like, well, really?
Well,
Let's go out here
I knew a guy, a relative of my wife's family that did the same exact thing. If he felt anything different about a place he was at, he would just start taking pictures.
Yep.
And then later on, he would find things in the pictures that he thought were interesting. Yep.
And the thing about that is I don't use an expensive camera. I take it with a cheap cell phone, an Android cell phone.
Yeah.
Under less than $100 cost in purchase.
Right.
Because one reason I found is that the using a cheaper digital device to take a picture, you're less likely to get accused of photoshopping because they're easy to, an untrained eye can tell when something's photoshopped. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And using an expensive camera that, like my niece is a photographer. She has a $1,500 camera that she takes pictures with. And it's got everything on there. It's got a photo editor. It's got like 1,000 times more stuff on it.
Yeah, my wife's a professional photographer, so I definitely understand. Plus, we're in a day and age now where although photoshopping is a big thing still, the technology, the antagonist of that, the other side of that technology is also catching up. Anybody can debunk a Photoshop now.
Oh yeah.
It takes a few steps and you can see it right away if it's a Photoshop.
Well, and here's another thing, and people can check this too. The oldest known imaging company in America is Getty Imaging, and they have two bases of operation. One's in New York and one's in Washington State. And this is where all your major photographers would go before the technology where they could do all this stuff at home.
Right.
To have their photos and stuff processed, all the magazine people, everybody. And the machines they have there for like the old style film, they have a huge screen, and you can filter out a lot of stuff. You can bring the background forward and blur the foreground and so on and so forth. You can single out one individual thing and make everything cloudy, but it's all done by hand. And even changing on those old machines, anything in the photo, it's not done digitally. It's done by an artistic, pretty much brush and pen style of overlapping.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've actually been to the one in New York back in the day, when I was doing some other work, contracted work, as a younger man. But that, by comparison to the stuff they have now, I mean, would blow you away, because it takes a really good artist with these old machines to do some of the stuff to make a fake image back then. And sometimes it was even more real than the stuff they have now on these digital stuff. But that being said, all this, I could write 3 or 4 books on the stuff I've experienced just in Kentucky alone, and the strange, anomalous stuff. Everything from the tunnels and underground here in Somerset that not only I've explored somewhat with myself and a few friends and Miss Ross, to Burnside, Kentucky, in a place called Keno, which used to be part of the staging grounds for the Indian Removal Act, where they gathered up the federal soldiers gathered up the Indian tribes and was moving them out west before the Land Act of 1880. Anyway,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of places around here that is connected to the tribal people that lived on the outskirts of Kentucky.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
of course, we've all heard the stories about how the 5 nations of Indians had cursed all the presidents, you know,
Yeah.
2 times, you know, for going back on their word.
Right.
And one of the stories that I got told by he's I can't remember his name to save my life, but he was an older Cherokee man that used to live here. He was born here in eastern Kentucky, but he lived here in Somerset. And he never had a car; he'd always walk. And he told me that way a long time ago, before Lake Cumberland was ever milked, that the valleys and lower parts of Kentucky, where all the creek lines were always considered, along with the caves, considered sacred. That is the reason why they never settled into the interior. And some of the research that I've done that goes back to the Native American legends, like the Iroquois name for Kentucky, the way it's pronounced and the way it's translated actually is translated to mean the land of tomorrow. And then if you look at the Cherokee legend about why nobody ever settled here, is that the belief was that this land of Kentucky belonged to an ancient race of white people, and it could be also what some tribes called the Moon-Eyed people.
Yeah.
You know?
I've heard of those. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen all kinds of stuff, you know, at different stages. One of the craziest anomalies I've yet to do a video on or make a video of is, we know that we're taught that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and that it only changes a variant according to how the planet rotates around the sun by anywhere from 5 to 15 degrees from one spot to another from east to west over a year's time, right?
Yeah.
So, but over here where I live, there's no 180 degrees with the 5 degree to 15 degree variance. Like right now, this time of year, at sunrise, the sun comes up.
Yeah.
If you know where east to west is here, if you know where Highway 27 is north to south, I live on the western side of Highway 27, okay?
Okay.
So on a map, if you look at a map of Somerset, the sun doesn't come up in the east like you think. And I don't know what's, you know, if it's the geomagnetic anomaly causing this as an illusion or if it's something completely different, because it comes up behind my house, which that should be southwest, which doesn't make sense. Okay?
Okay.
And then sets northwest. That's not 180 degrees. That's less than 90 degrees. Which is strange. I mean, it's strange. And my father was in the Air Force for 20 years, so I'm, you know, direction, it wasn't, you know, I don't have to look at a compass or a watch to know where I'm at on the earth right now. I mean, you know, just because he drilled it into me. So, even, and the first person that, I didn't notice this at first. This was friends of mine that had noticed this anomaly. And then another thing that is strange is we was working on my sister's house here, putting a new roof on it, and I had some people staying here doing the work. And one of my friends that was working with us, he said, I don't know, Jim, what it is, if it's me or something, but I could have swore that your neighbor behind you, that their barn and their property was a mile away yesterday. Now it looks like it's right in the backyard, almost like the land's moving back and forth. You know, and I've witnessed, after he said that, I started witnessing that, and I started pointing it out. So just pay attention. You tell to other people, and you tell me what you think.
I've actually I've looked into that anomaly before. That's not the first time I've heard that one.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know what the name for it is, but it literally it's like a weird feeling of distance. Somehow distance is changed or manipulated somehow.
Yeah.
Or it's you know, you feel like you've known how far something was away from you for all this time, and then out of nowhere it just feels like it's closer or farther. You know?
Yep. And
I have heard of that though.
And well, the crazy thing is generally that's what the version I've heard of it generally happens to sailors out on the ocean.
Yeah.
You know, and but I've never heard of that happening with anybody on land, because you have you have objects that you can look at a distance or at certain distances and say, okay, if that's X amount of feet or miles from me here, then the next one has to be because of height and angle that you're seeing it from your own eyes.
Yeah.
So it's quite strange sometimes, and I've had people who are straight skeptics that have stayed here a night or two and has come up and asked me, strange things like, well, who's that person knocking on the door? I said, well, there wasn't nobody knocking on the door, because if the dogs ain't barking, then there ain't nobody here.
Right.
But you could hear like somebody, rapping on the door.
Yeah.
And those kind of things can be debunked for any reason, like a house settling, wind, and something
Sure, yeah.
out of place. But when it happens on a consistent level at the same times and the same times a year, and you see the same stuff or similar stuff at these same, intervals, it's something that is intelligent. And I've been doing, watching a lot of different people talk on the universe and how we're all connected, which is the truth, and that energy does not dissipate; it just moves on to something else.
Yeah,
including life. Okay?
That's
even death,
the leading theory as of right now. Is, I mean, it's really hard for us to measure energy in any fashion. So I know I said this on one of our shows a few weeks back. Is there's a lot of science that we still talk about as if it's fairy tale.
Yeah,
and the whole energy thing and relativity. You know what I mean? There is relativity and gravity at play on the Earth right now.
Mm-hmm. And there's places also on the Earth that where the same amount measured in one spot it deviates in another.
Yeah,
which is what causes the confusion and the arguing between the relativity of gravity and whether it exists or not, because these measurements have been taken by modern equipment, and there's left scratching our head as to why is this one spot measuring this amount, but you go X amount of miles or across the ocean here or there, and geographically speaking, the land structure, rocks and everything is geographically the same.
Yeah, but
why is it different?
It comes back to the whole thing. The argument, the flat Earth versus the round Earth thing.
Right.
Both sides of the argument are wrong. You're right. And I've found that I've found that interesting for a long time, because the Earth is being pulled from the middle constantly.
Yep.
And as it rotates, that gravity is stretching it. So there is going to be geographical differences anywhere that it's being stretched.
And that's true, and it's being pulled in different directions at different times in different phases in space and time.
Sure.
And the other thing is that they don't realize that the Earth's core is not rotating the same way as the planet itself.
Right. Yeah.
The Earth's core is rotating in the opposite direction. The ocean's currents between the Pacific and the Atlantic are going in different directions.
Sure.
And each one of those things has an effect on the gravitational and magnetic fields of the Earth. And most people, what amazes me is, I didn't have to go to school to learn or to understand that, but a lot of people just, they
absolutely
they don't get it.
The ocean itself creates its own magnetic field.
Exactly.
It's there's what do you call it? There's heavy metals. They're not enough to concentrate, but you get a whole entire planet full of ocean with heavy metals in it, and they're moving constantly.
Yep, exactly.
It's not a gigantic magnetic field, but it's a pretty damn good one.
It's enough to cause readings, in certain spots.
And assist with radio signals.
Oh yeah. And see, that was another thing, that when it comes to radio signals, everything in the universe puts off its own frequency.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And for the skeptics out there, this should be the one thing that kind of makes them scratch their head and go, well, maybe there's something to this paranormal stuff, because if a grain of sand can put off its own frequency, and it's an inert object, and a living creature such as a plant, a human, an animal, even the air has its own frequency.
Yeah.
So where does that energy go when it's no longer running that living being, or what? It's got to go somewhere.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I call Earth a recycling machine. And it basically, anything that we've created on Earth will go back into the Earth.
Absolutely.
There's nothing that man has ever created that will just totally not decay. And you know, if you look at a lot of things, everything's connected. And you know, I'm so scatterbrained about everything, trying to stay focused on one topic. But it's hard to, because they're all connected. You know.
Yeah.
The studies I've been watching on the mycelium. I don't know if you know what that is. It's not a fungus. It's like an amoeba.
Yeah.
But it's part of the decay process in the growth of forests and how we get soil and so forth. But it is intelligent, but it has no brain.
Right.
Okay. It can find its way through a maze to find a piece of oat to devour. You know, and which is we have a thing like that on this earth. Then why is it not possible for some of these skeptics to understand that after this living body dies, doesn't mean it's the end. It's just the energy that's running our bodies is going to move on to something else or get recycled back into this earth somehow or some way.
I think that most of the skeptics, it's not that they're disputing the energy itself. I think they're disputing how organized that energy is.
Right.
I think that's where the argument is if a person dies, does the energy that was inside them reorganize itself enough to stick around? I think that's where the argument is, you know.
And that's interesting that you bring that up too, because there's an actual study that you can look up that they've been doing here in the past 10 years in emergency rooms.
Yeah.
Where they've got extra equipment in the emergency room that takes a baseline reading of the amount of energy in the room with all the equipment. And then when somebody dies, they take another reading, and they've come to find out that there's a spike in energy that is not connected to the mechanical, electrical machines within the emergency rooms that sticks around for as little as 5 minutes and for as long as 45 minutes.
I've witnessed that myself. I can corroborate that.
Are you talking about
it's a spike, a release of energy at the point of death.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember.
And it is measurable. You can, I mean, this is terrible, but you can feel it just by holding the person's hand.
Yep.
It's powerful and it's, you know, it's devastating, but, you know, it is, I can corroborate that.
And, you know, I've had some, you know, well, I had one incident that almost took my life years ago. I've had several, but most of them been car accidents.
No.
But the one, you know, was a mistaken identity, and somebody literally shot me.
Oh my God.
But I survived that. Lucky survived it. I mean, I had some memory loss and some vision loss, but when it came back, you know, thanks to friends like Amber Ross, who, you know, reminded me of things that was confusing in my mind at the time, because when you have memory loss, none of your memories come back in the order in which you've created them. You know, so you get this confusion about, well, wait a minute, that seems weird, seems familiar, but I don't remember, you know. And then, but moving on with that is going into the whole aspect of reincarnation. I fully believe in that, because I've got one other friend of mine. She lives in Ohio, named Becky Carmen. That we've experienced death together, because we had a thing where we have two friends of ours that are Cherokee, and one of them's a spiritual shaman, and we did you know, the whole searching our souls thing. I don't know exactly what the Cherokee call it, but spirit walk, I guess, for your own, to figure yourself out.
Yeah.
And we saw the same things of instances that didn't happen in this life, but we described things and people and the same places as being there together when these things happen, which was, you know, it kind of blew my mind, because when somebody describes something that you've never told anybody right out to you, and your jaw drops, and then you do the same thing with them and their jaw drops, you're like, wait a minute, there's something more to this life than just what we're told. And I say that my big saying is stop believing mass media and believe what your gut tells you, and always be willing to help others in any kind of way.
Sure.
And don't discount anything anybody ever says.
So do you like you're saying that you believe in like reincarnation? Like, do you believe that will it like go like recycle the energy and stuff of that nature? Is it more along the lines? Would you stay in the same? Like, would you be reborn as a human again, or is it a possibility that you could come back as like a rodent, like a squirrel or a deer? Is it like kind of like that, or is it the energy stays in one flow towards?
Okay, this is how I explain it. Now Hindus and Buddhists have a different belief on it, but this is how I explain it. If you spend your life as a physical human being with a mind and a soul that ponder all this kind of stuff, and then you pass away, why would you be comfortable coming back as anything else other than another human? You wouldn't know how to be a flower. You wouldn't know how to be an animal. You wouldn't know how to be these other things. All you would know how to be is what you were before. And it makes more sense looking at it like that than it does to me. And I'm not knocking anybody of any other type of following or anything, because I try to listen to everybody, and this is where I get most of my insight, is listening from these different cultures. Because we're all connected in one way, shape, or form. How we're connected and why we're connected is the two biggest, questions that we have. But it makes more sense to me that living and dying is a cycle, and we do get processed back into this life. Some are granted what I call the unfortunate blessing of remembering past lives, and some have no memory of it all.
See, I could totally get behind this.
Yeah.
Because I've often felt kind of like an alien myself.
Yeah.
All growing up, I always felt out of place with people. I could have been a plant.
Right.
I feel like I could have been a plant.
This actually brings me to a question that we've actually talked. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, and I would like your opinion on it. We're talking about like recycling of energy, and I don't know how you feel, and I know some of our listeners, they have a lot of religious faith. I'm not a religious person, but we always talk about these demons and possessions. Could this ever be possible? Do you think that this energy from, like, say, somebody that's a very malevolent person, maybe a person that is killed, do you think that could be the demon that we're all thinking that we're saying it is, like, from a biblical...
It's highly possible. It's highly possible. And here's why I say this. We know that in electricity, that we have positive, negative, and neutral, okay? So the same thing can be said for the energy in humans, our bodies that run the electrical current that runs our bodies, okay, that pumps our hearts. In humans, it's the same thing. In animals, it's the same thing. You have positive and negative and neutral, okay, and how that interacts with others, because positive stays with a positive current, just like in magnetics, and they attract to each other, they're drawn to each other, and if they're not grounded neutrally, then you have this big, explosion, let's say. You have this spark or arc that creates fire and can cause destruction.
Yeah.
So
it'll ground itself on something eventually.
Right. And see, that's the thing. And, having this, ability of being somewhat of a medium, and I tell you, there's been times I have, let me explain it this way. If you ever find yourself in a position where you are either witnessing by vision or feeling or hearing a voice, now you won't hear anything physically most of the time. It's more like a feeling that I get. And if I do hear, let's say, a whisper or whispers, know this. There's a saying that comes out of the Bible that says you cannot trust the dead because they know nothing, okay? And most of the time, anything that talks to you that is deceased is not your grandmother or your father or whoever that's passed on. It's something else pretending to be that. And you can't give them any any type of leeway, okay? Because most of the time what happens is they're telling you bad things anyway, giving you this feeling of dread and bad things and stuff, and so you have to understand that is very much what you think of as being a demon.
Okay.
Whatever they are, whether they're former humans who were not good, or whether there's some other type of energy that comes from somewhere else, know this, that there's a positive and negative, and very rarely does the positive have to speak to you to know that it's positive. It's just a feeling and you'll know it.
Yeah.
Whereas something negative will try to make you believe so hard, just like a con artist trying to, sell you something that ain't no good just to get your money, or trying to, get in so they can get something else out of you of value without you knowing.
Yeah.
So it's very similar.
Car salesmen.
Exactly. Used car salesmen.
Yeah, used car salesmen. Yeah.
I swear it runs good.
Yeah.
So Amber brought up that she told us her story. It was pretty horrific.
Yeah.
And she names you as one of the people that was responsible for getting her out of that situation.
Yeah. See, there's when she mentioned about her ex and the stuff before the underground and being in tunnels stuff, yes, that house does exist.
Hey guys, come back Thursday to hear the rest of this amazing interview.
There's an owl out there hanging around, and it's pulled my number for sure. I can't remember if I said any last words, because the day before was a blur. They buried the old man about a week ago, and I wouldn't shed a tear if I could. Now we didn't see eye to eye, you see, until he closed his eyes for good. Thing follows you, my son. You'll live 100 nights searching for hell, and all of your days by the gun. Beware the good times in your life. They just hide the bad for a while. That feeling you hide behind the tears and the